In today's video, I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why female fat loss is harder. And I think this is important because we should never pretend that, fat loss for men and women is the same. It's not. Women need to be more disciplined and more patient to see slower results. And there's some good scientific reasons why. So I'm going to go through 5 reasons: energy, adaptation, hormones, the scales, and portions. Should be a good one. Let's get into it. Okay, first up, let's talk about energy, because I see this problem a lot in the fitness industry where women are treated like lighter version of men. And a particularly bad manifestation of this is when they're setting calories for fat loss. So men, say, well, I've done really well on 12 calories per pound of body weight, so I'll set that for my female clients. And this just doesn't work because women are not the same as men. Their body composition is different. At the same weight, they're likely to have more fat, less muscle, and slightly smaller organs. And this translates to about 500 calories less in terms of total daily energy expenditure at the same weight. So if you take a man and a woman that are both 180 pounds, on average, the man is likely to come up at, 3,000 calories and the woman's still going to come in at 2,400. And I'll show you some graphs now, some data. This is actually, I can show you this to be the case from the dietary referent intakes. This is real data. And it just shows you at every given body weight, men have a good 500, 600, 700 calories more to play with than women. And this is super important when it comes to losing weight, because the bigger your energy budget is, the easier it is to get things going. Okay, so the second reason female fat loss is harder is adaptation. And this is something that applies to both men and women, but there's some evidence that it is harder on women. So basically, when you start to lose weight, your body has a way of defending itself from that fat loss. Otherwise, we'd all just starve when we put ourselves in a deficit because we just keep on losing fat. But what happens is our body starts to adapt. So we've got lots of different hormones that play a part in this defense system. But the simplest way to explain it is using leptin. So basically, your fat cells secrete a hormone called leptin, which acts on the hypothalamus in your brain. And what it will do as you lose weight is it'll do 2 things. It'll drive up hunger, and it'll downgrade your energy expenditure. And this is, we've known about this for kind of 20 years, this adaptation, that as you lose weight, you gradually lose less energy. And it particularly comes out of your niche, your general activity, how much you fidget, how much you move around. As you lose weight, you tend to become a bit more sluggish, both subconsciously and consciously. So when they did the studies of this, they showed that actually there's a pretty sharp downgrade. If you just lose like 10, 12 pounds, you can easily lose kind of 300 calories per day in energy expenditure. And when they dug into the data of a bunch of people where they actually measured it out in studies, they found that the people who hit hardest with the fastest adaptation are often the women. And if you think about this on an evolutionary sense, this kind of makes sense because women that could survive well in periods of food shortage were more likely to make it to reproductive age. So women basically have this kind of defense system, hormonal defense system, that really tries to hold on to like 20% body fat, because that's about the range at which you need to maintain kind of healthy reproductive status. Whereas, guys can crash down towards 10% before it really starts to mess with their hormones. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about hormones. And this is pretty complex, but I'm just going to keep it high level. Basically, guys have a very stable hormonal environment. Their dominant sex hormone is testosterone, and it keeps their body in kind of the same place across the month. For women, things are very, very different. Because of the menstrual cycle, their body is changing in ways that really affect fat loss, water retention, coordination, strength, lots of things, and it can be really, really challenging for female clients. So, this is a really brief mock-up of the menstrual cycle. You have the follicular phase at the start, ovulation in the middle, and then the luteal phase for the second half. The follicular phase is estrogen dominant, and then the luteal phase is progesterone dominant. And this has some really, really relevant things that change for women across the month. So it's been shown in the literature that women expend more energy, can be 200 calories, 200 calories more in the luteal phase. But this is accompanied with extra hunger. So they've actually tried to measure it, and it comes in at like kind of an extra 300 calories a day. So in that phase, when they're hungry in the luteal phase, they actually just want to eat more. So they on average eat kind of 300, 400 calories more in this phase. And on top of that, they actually get physiological cravings for sugar in this phase. So this idea that leading up to your cycle in the week, 2 weeks before that, when you're hungry, it's actually physiological. You are physiologically hungry and you are craving sweet things. So on top of that, water retention plays a massive part. So there are studies showing that particularly for female athletes, like water retention just leading up to when the cycle, when the menses hit, it can be kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds on top of their kind of average weight. So it's really, really challenging for women losing the scale. And then early in the follicular phase, women tend to be stronger and more coordinated. So basically, it's just really, really challenging. And one of the ways in it's really challenging is if you're trying to use the scale, which I'm going to talk about now. Okay, a fourth thing that makes it harder for women to lose weight is it's just harder for them to use the scales to check progress. And this comes down to firstly to energy, but then secondly to hormones. So basically, because men have more energy to play with, it's easier for them to lose weight at a kind of a decent rate. So it's pretty typical for a guy that I'm working with to lose 1.5 pounds a week, whereas for a woman, she's really got to scrap for 1 pound a week. But on top of that, when I'm typically working with a man, we can use the scales, just take the average of their weekday weights, and it's a really good barometer of progress with a guy because he's got that stable hormonal environment. And if he's losing fat at, say, 1.5 pounds a week, really his scale weight's only going to fluctuate a couple of pounds either side of that, due to salt and carbs and whatever. But the trend is generally pretty solid. So we'll have someone check in, I've lost 2 pounds, I've lost 2 pounds, I've lost 2 pounds, I've lost 2 pounds, and it's just really easy going. With a woman, using the scale is really, really tough because if she's losing 1 pound of fat a week, at the start of her 28 days, her weight will come flying down really, really low. But then as progesterone creeps up later in the cycle, even if she's losing that pound a week, her scale weight can shoot right up. And I've got women, they're losing 1 pound a week. That's the kind of signal, 1 pound a week. But the noise is plus or minus 5 pounds across their cycle. So leading up to their cycle, when their menses hit, that last week, their water retention can be 5, 6, 7 pounds, which totally masks the progress that they're having on the scale. So we need to be really smart about things. We need to use tape measures and just really focus on what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, for women using the scale, you've really got to be comparing kind of averages on the 1st week and the 5th week and the 9th week and the 13th week. Because, day to day and, comparing your 1st week and your 4th week, it's just impossible because there is so much noise caused by these hormones that makes it super hard for women to use the weight to check progress when they're losing weight. Okay, and to wrap this up, we're going to talk about our 5th one, which is portion distortion. And this kind of applies to everyone, but it's so much worse for women. So if you were looking for a kind of simple description of the obesity crisis, you'd say something like our genetics kind of load the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. So people who are predisposed to getting fat, you stick them into this environment of hyperpalatable food where we're eating too much of the wrong foods and everyone's just getting fat. But this is even worse for women because of the portions that they're confronted with on a daily basis. Every time they go out to dinner, they are confronted with a totally unrealistic plate of food. Everything on the menu is designed for men who are overeating because, restaurants will go bust if they don't, serve enough food for people. But it's just the serving sizes are insane for women. And I'm going to show you this with some data. So at the start, I showed you that women burn, on average, kind of 500 calories less at the same weight. But the thing is, the average man and the average woman are not the same weight. Men are bigger. And in this kind of sample size the sample that I took out of the dietary reference intakes, the median man had an average kind of energy expenditure of 3,076 calories in a day. The median woman was 2,360. But these are kind of biggish people who are burning a lot of energy. They're not people trying to lose weight. So the 711 calorie difference between them is bad enough to begin with. But let's say they're trying to lose weight. So if I apply a 20% deficit to either of these two, and then I'll just divide that amount I'm left over by 3 to give us an idea of what dinner would be like. Basically what we come up with is we get a woman eating kind of 600 calories for dinner and a man eating 820 calories for dinner. That's their budget. But that's a man losing 1.5 pounds a week and a woman losing 1 pound at best. So the woman has to lose less, but every time she goes out, she's confronted with 1,000-calorie dinner. And that's why women are constantly ordering from the entree section, because it's just insane. Every time women are walking around in a food environment that's just asking them to overeat. The portions are completely unrealistic for women, and it's just a total nightmare. So when you're losing weight and your energy expenditure is down greater and your hunger has gone up and there's that tension, your body is asking you, it's fighting you to try and regain the weight, you've got to walk around in a food environment that's constantly asking you to overeat. It's absolutely insane. So women have it really, really tough. They have it tough in terms of energy. They have it tough in terms of adaptation. Their hormones are not stable, so they're confronted with a different body as the month goes on. It's really, really tough for women to use the scale because water retention really masks progress, so they can't really tell on a week-to-week basis where they're at. And then lastly, they live in a food environment that constantly prompts them to eat too much food, particularly in the US, but in most Western countries, women are now just confronted with massive portion sizes that are completely irrelevant to what they're trying to do with their bodies. So it is really tough for women. I hope you enjoyed that. This stuff, it is just harder. If you are a guy training female clients, please understand it is much, much harder for women. And, you know, if you're a guy living with a woman that's trying to lose weight, please make an effort to help her out in her food environment, because that is one thing that really, really makes things tough on women. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. If you do, check out the cheat sheet or the coaching program. Thanks so much. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you jump on the email list and get our 5 simple strategies to start losing weight cheat sheet.